There is a sanctuary inside of you, a quiet room that has been waiting. The world has taught you to live outside. In the noise, in the hustle, in the endless performance of being everything to everyone. But your soul has been whispering for you to come home. There is a profound power that awakens when you finally turn the key, when you close the door on the world's demands, and decide to sit with yourself in the holy quiet. This is not emptiness you are stepping into. It is fullness. It is the silence that answers, not the one that asks. It is the stillness that creates, not the one that waits. Once you learn to stop pouring your spirit at leaking cups and begin to fill your own well, deep within, life itself must rearrange to honor the queen who has finally taken her throne. There is a silence the world fears, and then there is the silence the soul cherishes. The world calls it distance. The world calls it coldness. The world calls it giving up. But the woman who has walked through the fire and learned not to speak of the flames, she knows the truth. She understands that true power does not scream. It does not need to announce its arrival. It does not fight for a seat at the table. It builds its own table in the center of its own unshakable peace. We have been raised to believe our value is in our voice, in our yes, in our immediate reply. But that is the great deception of a loud and hurried world. The silence I am calling you to is not the silence of a locked jaw. It is the silence of a settled spirit. It is the quiet dignity of a woman who no longer runs to every battle she is invited to. She has learned to protect her energy as her most sacred treasure. You see, any soul can make a racket. It takes no courage to add to the chaos, to throw your opinions into the wind and hope someone catches them. But stillness, stillness, that is the craft of the wise. That is the strength of the rooted. It is a presence so deep it needs no sound to prove it is there. To choose silence is not to become invisible. It is to finally see yourself. It is to gather all the scattered pieces of your heart and bring them home. While others are chasing the echo of applause, you are chasing the truth of your own soul. While others are drowning in the static of opinion, you are walking toward the still, clear waters of your own knowing. And in that clarity you find you are not abandoned. You are sovereign. You are centered. You are finally, truly in command. If this quiet word is already stirring in your spirit, let me know in the comments. I read each one as a prayer for a sister. They will question your newfound quiet. Of course, they will. They were comfortable with the Hugh who was always available. They will call it strange. They will say you have changed. They will try to lure you back into the noise with guilt and concern. But they do not understand. You have chosen this stillness not because you have nothing to say, but because you have finally stopped needing to say it to them. You are full, overflowing, with a quiet knowing, with a self-respect so profound it refuses to be spent on meaningless debates. And yes, there will be days when your silence is mistaken for weakness, when your choice not to engage is called surrender. Some will call you defeated. Let them. You are not in the business of correcting the vision of those who refuse to see you. You are in the sacred business of remembering yourself, and remembering your own soul is the only strategy you will ever need. This silence is your temple. When the world's voices become a storm, it is your shelter. When people try to hand you a distorted mirror of yourself, it is your clarity. In the sacred quiet, you can finally hear it, your own voice, the one that was buried under years of expectations and obligation, the one that knows your truth. Silence is a master teacher. It teaches you the rhythm of your own spirit. It teaches you when a word is needed and when your presence is enough. Some arguments are not worthy of your sword. Some accusations do not deserve the honor of your reply. When you answer every call, you drain your own well. But when you choose your words with the care of a goldsmith, you become unforgettable. Not because you were always talking, but because when you spoke, a holy peace fell upon the room. There is no weakness in preserving your spirit. There is no shame in letting others scramble for the microphone, while you sit rooted and calm, like an ancient tree. That is not a retreat. That is a revolution of the soul, the kind that does not need to be broadcast. It needs only to be lived. We exist in a time that worships the instant reply, the loud opinion, the one who is always on. But sister, listen to my spirit on this. The most vital things in this life are not born in noise. Growth, healing, becoming. They take their time. They happen in the sacred dark. A rose seed does not shout its intentions from beneath the soil. The sun does not scream for attention as it sets the sky on fire. They simply unfold in their own divine timing, with a grace that needs no audience. So the next time someone tries to drag you into their personal storm, remember this: your silence is not surrender. It is sovereignty. You are not ignoring them, you are honoring the God in you. This chosen silence is a form of genius. It clarifies your vision, it gentles your heart, and it fortifies your spirit. It sends a quiet message to the universe. I am no longer available for the static. I am tuned to the frequency of my own peace. And in a world that profits from your distraction, nothing is more rebellious than your focus. Nothing is more radical than your restraint. And nothing, my dear one, is more beautiful than knowing when to speak and when to simply quietly become. There comes a season in every woman's life when she stands in the kitchen holding a cup of coffee and realizes the pot has been empty for a very long time. She has poured and poured and poured into her children, her husband, her work, her church, and she looks down to find her own cup is not just empty. It is cracked, not because she is not a loving woman, but because she forgot the first rule of the sanctuary. You cannot serve holy water from a dry well. You were never meant to nourish the world from a place of depletion. You were meant to discover the eternal spring within you, to fill your own cup with purpose, with joy, with sacred rest. And then, only then, if it overflows, let that overflow bless the world. But the filling of your own soul must come first. To focus on yourself is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of sacred devotion. It is to honor the temple that houses your spirit, your laughter, your tears, your wisdom. It is to stand before your own reflection and declare, I too am worthy of my own tenderness. This is not vanity. It is the homecoming your soul has been aching for. It is long, long overdue. For too many seasons, we were taught that to be a good woman was to erase ourselves, that our holiness was measured by how much we could endure, that our strength was in holding everyone else together, even as we were quietly falling apart. But let this truth settle into your bones. Love in its purest form includes you. It must include your rest. It must include your boundaries. It must include your own becoming. And if the love you are giving or receiving demands your diminishment, it is not love. It is a transaction, and your soul is not for sale. You do not owe the world your immediate response. You do not need to write a thesis explaining why you are choosing to be still, why you are turning off the phone that has become a leash, why you are no longer at the receiving end of calls that only curdle your spirit. That is not being unkind. That is divine wisdom. That is spiritual alignment. That is self-respect, wearing the quiet cloak of silence. When you first begin to turn your gaze inward, The world will protest. It will behave like a spoiled child. It will ask you where you have gone. It will wonder why the free emotional labor has ceased. It will miss the version of you that was always on call, the one who said yes when her spirit was screaming no. But you are not a museum piece. You are not here to remain as you were, a memory in someone else's story. You are here to become the author of your own, and authorship requires quiet contemplation. It requires solitude. It requires the courage to write a new chapter. When you choose to focus on yourself, you develop a new kind of sight. You begin to see that not every outstretched hand is meant for you to hold. Not every voice that calls your name deserves an answer. Not every open door is your door. Maybe this is your story. Some invitations are just distractions wearing a pretty dress. Some opportunities are just detours that lead you away from your own soul. And when you finally honor yourself enough to say no, peace will return to you like a dove finding its way back to the ark after a long, weary flight. There is a holy dignity in choosing yourself. There is a profound healing in finally saying, I will no longer abandon myself to keep others comfortable. Because every time you betray your own inner knowing, every time you silence your own intuition, you teach your spirit that it is not important, and you, my dear, are the most important thing in your life. You are the soil from which every dream you have will grow, and if you do not water your own roots, they will wither, no matter how beautiful the flowers you try to offer to the world. People may praise your blossoms, but you will know, you will feel the deep, secret thirst. And eventually the world will see it too. So take this time with yourself. Get quiet enough to hear the whisper of God in your own heart, beneath the clamor of the world's expectations. Get gentle enough to hold your own hand through the dark. You do not need to rush to fix what is not yours to fix. You do not need to apologize for slowing down, for sleeping in, for starting over and over and over again. This is your sacred journey, and you are allowed to walk it at the pace of grace. Some will call you selfish. Let them. Some will say you've changed. Thank them. Growth is not always a loud announcement. More often it is a quiet, intentional turning. And when you begin to grow inward, the world around you will begin to reflect that newfound strength. Your focus on yourself is not just an act of survival, it is a quiet act of worship. In a world that wants you broken down into bite-sized pieces, distracted and dependent on its approval, choosing to honor your own wholeness is the ultimate declaration of freedom. You are saying with your quiet resolve, I am enough. I am worthy of my own care. I will no longer wait for someone else to grant me permission to shine. Focus on yourself, not because others do not matter, but because you cannot pour from an empty vessel. You cannot offer a clear reflection to others if your own waters are murky. You cannot be a light for others if you are sitting in your own darkness. And when you do this, when you begin to treat yourself as a beloved child of God, everything begins to shift. The universe responds to the energy you claim for yourself. The more you honor yourself, the less you will tolerate dishonor. The more sacred time you give yourself, the more you will find time for what is sacred. And in the end, you will see this journey inward was never selfish. It was salvation. It was your soul finally calling you home. Growth is a humble thing. It does not arrive with a marching band or demand a red carpet. It does not ask for your vote. It simply begins as a quiet stirring, a subtle shift, like the moment you realize the light is returning after a long winter, long before the first crocus dares to push through the frozen earth. We live in a culture that worships the finished product, the grand opening, the before and after picture. But true growth, soul growth, doesn't live there. It lives in the quiet rubble after the earthquake of heartbreak. It lives in the long, dark hallway of uncertainty. When you are alone with your own shadow and your own flickering flame of hope, it lives in the holy pause. The moment you choose not to answer in the old way, the moment you choose to breathe, to sit with the discomfort instead of outrunning it, that is the fertile ground where real transformation takes root. Not under the bright lights of the stage, but in the shadows of surrender, where your character is forged and your courage is found. If you're hearing this, it's for you. There is a holiness to the silence that holds our becoming. It is not an empty silence. It is a pregnant silence, full of presence. The kind of presence that listens to the deepest parts of you, that allows the space for your true self to rise from the ashes. When life is loud, we are reactive. We run, we chase, we distract. But when it becomes quiet, truly quiet, we are forced to meet the one person we have been avoiding, ourselves. And that is where the real journey begins. You cannot force a flower to bloom by screaming at the bud. You cannot hasten its beauty by prying open its petals. The same is true for your healing, your purpose, your rising. It needs the stillness of the Sabbath. It needs to be protected from the harsh glare of public opinion. It needs time. And it needs to happen away from the crushing weight of comparison. So many beautiful souls abandon their own growth because they cannot see the fruit on the first day. They want to skip the unseen work and get straight to the harvest. But the fruit never comes before the root. And roots, my dear one, grow in the dark. They dig deep into the messy, the uncomfortable, the unseen. They go where others are afraid to look. So that when the time is right to rise, you are anchored, you are steady. If you do not allow yourself this sacred time of quiet rooting, you will rise too quickly, too fragilely, and you will be toppled by the first strong wind of adversity. We are not made to grow in one explosive burst. We are made to grow in seasons, and some seasons will look like winter. They will look like isolation. They will feel like rest, or even retreat. But these are not fallow fields. These are holy grounds. They are seasons of preparation, of cleansing, of taking the deep, long breath before the song of your new life begins. You may feel like you are behind because your journey is quiet, because no one is applauding your unseen work, because the world has not yet validated your becoming. But do not be deceived by the silence. The most powerful forces in the universe grow without a single witness. A mountain does not ask for an audience to touch the sky. A redwood tree does not need a round of applause to reach for the heavens. They simply rise, quietly, faithfully, over centuries. And you, beloved, are no different. There is a pressure in this age to document our every move, to prove our worth by broadcasting our progress. But true growth doesn't need to be live streamed. It reveals itself in your spirit when the time is right. And often by the time the world takes notice, the roots have already been growing for years. In the hidden, sacred spaces of your life, let them wonder what you are doing. Let them question your quiet dedication. You do not owe anyone an explanation of your process. You owe yourself the divine patience to evolve without an audience. You do not need to be loud to be powerful. Some of your greatest victories will happen in moments so still, so tender, that only you and God will know they have occurred. Stay there, in the quiet, in the stretch, in the unglamorous holy work of healing and rebuilding and becoming. Let the noise of the world be what it is. Just noise. Let them rush. You are not late. You are not missing out. You are doing the most important work a human spirit can ever do. You are growing roots. And one day when your bloom finally arrives, it will not be because you forced it. It will be because you honored the quiet. You trusted the process. and you gave yourself the holy permission to grow in your own sacred time. If a sister's face came to your mind as I was speaking, a woman who needs to hear this permission to be still, send this word to her heart now. There comes a time when the applause stops, when the crowd finds a new darling, the spotlight moves on, and the echo of your name fades from the room. At first, this silence can feel like death, like failure, like you have become irrelevant to the world. But if you can stay in that quiet space long enough, if you can resist the desperate urge to run back onto the stage and beg for one more look, something miraculous begins to unfold. You begin to see yourself clearly, perhaps for the very first time, because transformation does not happen for an audience. It requires a sacred privacy. It needs the space to gently break apart the pieces of you that were built for approval, the parts of you that were shaped by fear, to uncover the eternal, unshakable truth of who you were always meant to be. Real change does not begin when you are trying to maintain an image. It does not blossom under the hot lights of perfectionism. It begins when you are no longer trying to impress anyone, and you start the real, raw, holy work of impressing your own soul. You will know you are on the precipice of a great transformation, when all the old maps no longer work, when the ways you used to soothe yourself no longer bring comfort, when the roles you have played for a lifetime begin to feel like a cage. This deep discomfort is not a punishment. It is a holy invitation. It is your life calling you out of the shallows and into the deep. And it is no accident that this call often comes when no one is watching. The soul does not heal on a jumbotron. It needs the safety of the sanctuary. It needs to be unseen so that it can finally truly see itself. A great shedding happens in the quiet. You begin to release your grip on the things you thought were you, the titles, the roles, the reactions you depended on to feel real. At first it will feel like you are losing everything, but then it will begin to feel like freedom, because when you are no longer a puppet in the world's show, you are finally free to be whole, not perfect, not polished, whole. It is so easy to mistake attention for love, but when the attention moves on, you are left alone with what is real. That is when the true work begins. You learn to speak to yourself with the kindness you once craved from others. You learn to comfort your own fears without needing to post them for public consumption. You learn to grow in the dark, without narrating your pain or turning your healing into content. The world may call this a disappearing act, but it is an emergence. You are not vanishing. You are returning. You are reacquainting yourself with the parts of your spirit that were buried under the noise. And in that holy reintroduction, you realize the most beautiful truth. Your transformation was never meant to be a performance. It was meant to be your liberation. The world teaches us to show up and be brilliant, but it does not teach us how to sit in the quiet ashes and patiently rebuild. It doesn't applaud the nights you cry until the dawn breaks. It doesn't give awards for the mornings you choose forgiveness when no one even knows the war you just survived. But those moments, those are the sacred moments, the unseen victories that shape your soul in ways no amount of fame ever could. When no one is watching, you start asking better questions. Not, how do I look, but how do I feel? Not, will they approve, but am I aligned with my own truth? That single shift changes everything. You stop chasing relevance and you start cultivating resonance. You begin to build a life that feels good from the inside out, even if no one ever claps for it. And as you grow in this beautiful solitude, you begin to carry a new energy, a presence that cannot be manufactured, a peace that does not need to be announced. It just is. Because when you have been to the depths of your own soul and made peace with the shadows and the light you found there, you no longer need anyone else's permission to be whole. You are not becoming for them. You are becoming for you. And the great irony is this: once you no longer need to be seen, you are seen more clearly than ever. Once you stop begging for validation, people begin to feel the strength of your anchor. You don't have to speak louder, but your words carry the weight of the mountains. You don't have to show off your healing, but it radiates from you like the gentle warmth of the sun. And that is the quiet, magnificent reward of a transformation that happens in the sacred dark. It shows, even when you are not trying to. Let the world forget you for a season. Let it turn its fickle gaze elsewhere. Use that sacred space, not to fall into despair, but to deepen your roots, to redefine your purpose, to rebuild your temple, because the most powerful version of you will not need a spotlight. You will arrive so full, so rooted, so real, that your very presence will be the light. Let them wonder where you have gone. Let them whisper about your silence. Let them watch as you rise, not with noise, not with spectacle, but with a stillness so profound it quiets every room you enter. You do not need to be seen to be becoming. You do not need to be heard to be holy. Focus on yourself. Stay silent, and let your life become the prayer. If this space feels like home to your spirit, I invite you to subscribe and join our sacred circle. There is always a seat at this table for you. Thank you for coming today. I appreciate it.